Math 1040 and the statistics course. In this video, I'm going to discuss the syllabus as well as weekly expectations and expectations for the course. So let's get started with the syllabus. So probably as this is an online class, our main form of communication is going to be through email. Okay. I have some instructions for emailing me, and so that I can most easily help you and assist you with your questions. But the main takeaway I want you to have is that when you email me, the most important thing is if you can just take a screenshot of the problem that you're having trouble solving or whatever it is. The two other things that are really useful is if you can put Math 1040 somewhere. The subject line is the most preferred place, and also your name, so that I can help, so that in case there's a, okay. So I do have some office hours, and if you want to meet me, you can click on this link to make a reservation. Okay. If those office hours don't work for you, you can go ahead and just email me, and I can try and find another time that would work for both of us. Okay. Now, the required textbook for this course is technically this one. I've had many students tell me that they've been happy and they've felt that all they needed is my lecture notes and or video lectures. So you're welcome to just use that if that's all that you feel you need, or you're also welcome to get the textbook. The other thing is that there are a couple of online free statistics books, and I've referenced in a lot of the assignments where you could read for additional resources in those stat books. Okay. Your grading in this course is as follows. So you have a signature assignment, and we'll go over that a little bit later. Your homework is 30% of your grade, and it's worth as much as both your exams put together. Then you have a final exam worth 25%. Now your exams are open for a window of time, so it's not just one day, but they're open on all these days. Okay, your final exam date is from August 7th to 11th. Okay, I'll let you read these details on your own, and then I'm going to just hit a couple of reminders for this class. So the first thing is, I don't want anyone to be surprised, but this is an online class. So if you were expecting something else, you should seek out another section. Okay. For your homework, the due dates are listed on Canvas, and there's a late penalty of 5% per day. Okay, so the sooner you can get me your homework, the better. Okay. Then one other reminder is that this is a sustainable class. So there are two sustainability learning outcomes, and the sustainability aspect of the course, it culminates in a signature assignment. Okay, so the signature assignment can be completed in groups if you like, or individually, and it needs to answer this big question: to what extent is statistics able to make conclusions on issues related to sustainability, and what do these decisions mean for society? Okay. So the signature assignment, I'm going to discuss it here. It's very broad and open, but you're graded on these criteria. Okay, so these are the three criteria you're graded on. The first one is how it's related to how it's related to sustainability and what it means for society. The second bullet point here is about the statistics that you learn in this class. So you need to cover topics related to graphical displays of data, confidence intervals, hypothesis tests, and the types of conclusions that you can draw from your data. Okay. Now there's some additional things that you should explain, such as to what extent the statistical methods can yield conclusions and what they mean. Then the last thing is just how this topic appealed to you. Okay. This is very broad, and you're welcome to write this on anything that you like, whether that's a data set or whether that's a technical report or an article. As long as it can address all of these items here, you're welcome to write about it for your signature assignment. Now, the hardest thing to address is this, the statistics that you're going to learn in this class. You need to make sure, and for instance, to discuss graphical displays of data. What are the key takeaways from it? Confidence intervals, hypothesis testing, the data collection method. So those are critical components that I'd like to see in your write-up. And whatever you choose, you need to make sure it has those things. Now, because some students find this to be maybe too broad or too open, I offer a couple of options here. So a lot of people choose this one. It's on a technical report produced by the state of Utah, and it's on cloud seeding. That is, cloud seeding is a method that the state of Utah uses to try and induce more snow in certain areas. Okay, and you can read about that in this report. You need to be sure to address these topics listed below these 3 bullets. That's a very long report. Another option that's a little bit more streamlined, and I'm just going to say it, I would say generally easier, because there's kind of like a plethora of options here. You can choose your own topic. That'd be this option. You can read a technical report. That is quite technical, and perhaps that's still quite challenging. Or you can write a report on the Salt Lake City temperature analysis quiz. Okay, and the goal of this quiz is to help you if you're struggling with your signature assignment. You can choose this option, and it's the most streamlined. So what happens is that you'll take this quiz, and one thing I want to point out is that this quiz is timed, so do not take this quiz unless you're prepared to take it, okay? Because many of the quizzes aren't timed, but this one is. So do not take this quiz until you're prepared to take it. And I'm going to preview this quiz. So I'm not going to show you all the questions. But first thing that you should notice is that this is timed. You have 1 hour to take this quiz. So do not open this quiz unless you're prepared to take it in 1 hour. Okay. But some questions that you might see is this. So here's a graphical display of data of Salt Lake City temperatures. And here's what's called a regression line and a data visualization. So I ask you some questions based on this graph. Now for your signature assignment, the quiz relates directly to this item. So you could, for instance, take a screenshot of this graphical display of data and talk about some of the key takeaways that's being reinforced by this quiz. Okay. Um, if we look at the next question, you know, uh, excuse me, I'm not sure what happened. Okay, that was the next assignment. So let's preview this. So because it previewed it, it chose a random question. Okay. And the question is, based on these graphs and knowledge of the assumptions for regression, select all questions that are true. Okay. Let's click here for next. Here's another question. It asks more about the regression model. It provides for you some output here. Okay. And also more output here. Then it asks you some questions here. You could use this output and some of the questions that are being asked here to write about in the signature assignment. Okay. And if we were to go to the next question, this is an output that produces what's called a p-value for hypothesis testing and a confidence interval. So you could discuss this confidence interval, you could discuss this p-value that's being produced here. And those are some key components that I'm asking you to produce here. Okay, so here are two of them. Okay, and you could use that to try and write about the data. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions you can ask here. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of both what to expect in the quiz and how that quiz could translate if you're not sure about what you want to write about. It gives you an option. Okay. Okay, so that's your signature assignment. Going back to the syllabus, your overall percentages correspond to these grades. So you get like an 89%, then that corresponds to a grade of B+. Okay. Okay, so those are some key things. So let's go back here. Okay. And I just want to illustrate something. So in this first week, you're going to have a syllabus quiz. And when you take your weekly quiz, you need to be a little bit careful. So let me just show you what I mean. Okay. So in this first question, it says if you have questions, you should include which of the following information. Okay, so I'm going to select this answer, and I'm going to select this answer. Okay, in the second question, it asks, I'm going to select a few of these questions. Okay, I'm going to select this question, and this question, and this one. Okay. Then for this question, I'm going to select this one, so I want you to pay attention to something. In this first question, I got no points, 0 out of 5 points. But you would say I selected one answer correct. And while I answered one answer correct, I also answered one question incorrectly. That incorrect question is worth negative points, so I got a 0. The points, because I selected this incorrect one, it canceled out the points for this correct question. Now in this second one, I got 2 correct answers and 1 incorrect. So I got some of the points, okay, because I had 2 correct and 1 incorrect. but it reduced my score because I had an incorrect answer. And then finally, in this third question, I got all 3 questions correct, so I got all 5 points. So it's just, I wanted to give you a heads up that you have to be careful what questions you select in, for example, a multiple answer type question. Okay, now let's go back and let's go to the weekly expectations. So in this first week, you just have the syllabus quiz. In the second week, you have a data collection quiz. In your third week, you have this quiz on summarizing and understanding data, and it goes on until week 7, where you have your first exam. You have a review and you have an exam. Okay, and that's the way the course goes. So if we keep going, you know, you'll have a quiz, a quiz, a quiz, and it'll keep going, another quiz, and then you'll have your second exam, and then another quiz, and then you'll have your Salt Lake City temperature analysis, you'll have a signature assignment, then you'll have a final exam. And that's the course and for the semester. Okay. Let's look at what a more typical quiz might look like. So for example, if I click on this quiz and I preview it, okay, when you take your quiz, PowerPoint slides, so these two, then you'll have a recorded lecture here and here, and then you'll read and reference if you like. Okay. Now notice this is a multiple answer question, so I need to select all that are true, and I need to be careful in which ones I select. This one's a multiple choice question, so I just need to find the correct answer. Okay. Question 3, again, it's a multiple answer. I need to select all that are true based on this graph. Okay. Question 4, again, select all answers that are true, so I need to be careful when I answer that. Okay. So just a heads up as to what the quizzes look like for your weekly homework. You've got the PowerPoints, you've got the recordings, you have your textbook, and then you have the questions themselves. Okay, well, that's an overview of the course. It's great to have you in this class, and I'm looking at a semester. Thank you very much.